line at the end of the night.
This is a Texas Motor Speedway that hosts its second consecutive Contender Series finale after joining the fray in the schedule a year ago. And Josh, a little nugget that I don't know if a lot of people have noticed, but Texas Motor Speedway, when they updated it, it might have the coolest caution light animation I think we've seen of just about any track on the schedule. The way it just rolls all the way through the catch fence, I've always appreciated it.
Very interesting caution light system, especially with it right on the catch fence on the front straightaway. That's exactly right. But this track for an eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series finale is an interesting one. I mean, we look at the schedule: Phoenix to start, then Homestead, Auto Club, Nashville, Dover, and Darlington. 7 completely different racetracks, and we finish off at an intermediate that races almost nothing like an intermediate in turns 3 and 4. It's very interesting to end it.
Indeed. Texas Motor Speedway, the place for our finale after we visited Phoenix, Homestead, Auto Club, Nashville, Dover, and Darlington in that order. I think it might be time to turn our attention elsewhere, though, because the schedule doesn't really matter all that much now that we're in race number 7. This is what does Blake McCann list the point standings entering this evening with the drops included.
You can see how many drivers on the left-hand side of your screen have really built up a good advantage, but we're looking more at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, right, James? I would say Colin Bowden on down. You can make a realistic case that if Doucette or Timmy Holmes has a bad night, they could fall out, but really we're looking about 17th on down to Colin Bowden, McKissick, Malik Ray, who's, of course, been in the Coke Series for a long time, and Kevin King, who's looking to get back for the first time since 2016. They have to just maintain tonight, do they, James? And then you look at Daniel Falkenham down to 22nd and Michael Cozy Jr. in that cut line that we have just below 22nd. Beneath that, Casey Tucker, Briar LaPrade, 2 drivers who have a very good shot that if it goes their way tonight, they could be on the inside rather than on the outside looking in.
And yes, your eyes do not deceive you. That is 22 drivers that we will be taking in this year's eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series to the Coke Series for next year. Let's learn a little bit more about this Texas Motor Speedway. There's more to it than just those caution lights, Josh Lee. There's a lot behind this mile and a half.
And you mentioned it, James. We finished off the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series here in 2021. Same thing here in 2022. Recent changes to this track a couple of years ago. Levels out turns 1 and 2. Relatively flat banking, almost like a Nashville Super Speedway. Then the run down the long back straightaway to turns 3 and 4. Much more like an older Atlanta Motor Speedway, just a little bit smoother with that repave. It's an intermediate track that has its own unique quirks and creates some unique passing opportunities as well, especially with the differing bankings in turns 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4. Setup builders had a really tough week this week.
Because you can't set the car up perfectly for both ends of the racetrack. You sort of have to pick one end and go with it, because 1 and 2 drive very differently from turns 3 and 4. Tire conservation, especially on exit out of turn 2, will also be key this evening. That corner of the racetrack has a deceptive ability to heat tires very, very quickly. Also, a reminder that if you have not had the chance to take advantage of the iRacing holiday sale, and you might be watching this broadcast for the first time and wondering how you can get involved in the world of iRacing, you can head to iRacing.com/holiday-sale to get 50% off of new memberships now until January 8th, 2023. Once again, that's iRacing.com/holiday-sale to pick up your new membership of iRacing today. Qualifying currently taking place for the field here at Texas Motor Speedway. Again, lots of cars trying to put down the fastest time. This is Brian Mercurio out of New Jersey, who is working his way off into 1 and 2. This sort of flatter 1 and 2, Blake, where you really have to wait to get back onto the throttle, more so than you'd like.
And that's exactly the case, that ever since they repaved Texas Motor Speedway, it's just a totally different animal down here in 1 and 2, and there's a lot of different ways you can approach that corner. You can enter really shallow, you can kind of take a big arc to the entry of 1 and 2, but in 3 and 4, kind of the same Texas of old, and if anything, it's made that bottom groove so strong in 3 and 4 that the fact that you're exiting turn 2 at a much lower degree of speed, you're not exactly going to carry that up to the top side unless you're Casey Tucker, who I'm sure, is coming to a qualifying lap right now. And James, look at Casey Tucker. He's beneath the cut line. You've put in hundreds and, for some of these drivers, thousands of laps at this racetrack in just 1 week. I can't imagine the pressure when we know how tough it is to pass, how important track position is here. Casey Tucker, this is the money lap, so to speak, to see if he can put down a decent lap and try to make his way and make up those points on Michael Cozy Jr., who sits on that cut line right now.
So the weather graphic just a few moments ago in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. Inside the sim, the air temp is 65 degrees Fahrenheit, track temp is 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and winds are heading south at 7 miles an hour. Our day in sim, December 10th. 2022, so a little over a week ago. It is just after noon Central Time in sim. Humidity is 45%, so not excessively crazy conditions for our finale at Texas Motor Speedway. This is more about how you attack these 100 laps. Josh Lee, as we take a look at tonight's race analysis.
And we'll go racing tonight for 100 laps around the Texas Motor Speedway, which is a pretty lengthy race distance at 150 miles for this series. Pit road speed at 45 miles per hour with a pit lane delta of about 20 to 23 seconds, which we'll talk about if we see those green flag stops about midway through this race with that estimated pit window of 58 to 62 laps. Expecting James about halfway, they'll cut the race in half. They'll bring it down into the pit lane, either under the green flag or under a yellow flag, and then 3 tire sets available. That could become interesting if we have a pretty exciting finish with overtime, but only expecting really about one of those sets of tires to be used today.
You will have to come down pit road at least once, but you probably won't have to come down more than once unless you want to, or if, as Josh hinted at, Blake, we get a late race caution, and then that throws tire strategy completely for a loop.
Yeah, it does, and this has kind of been the product of some of these shorter races a little bit, that you get much more straightforward strategy, and it seems like every single race we've gone to, we kind of have the majority of the field split the race in half, and the rest, well, they'll kind of go long and maybe hope for some strategy, but I just don't think you're going to see that a lot tonight unless you're somebody like Daniel Buttafuoco, who's having to make up about 15 points from the cut line.
A handful of nervous drivers as we bring you the starting grid for tonight's finale for the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway, which sees Vicente Salas post the fast time of 29.05 seconds to take the pole ahead of Colin Bowden for eRacer. Cody Bias and Brian Mercurio for Dead Zone and Legacy, respectively, will start third and fourth. Fifth on the grid is Colin Keister for Dead Zone, and Altus Esports Seth the Merchant will start sixth.
Going seventh will be Casey Tucker, a mega lap for him, looking to make up some points on the cut line. Much more straightforward for Joey Brown, who starts in 8th. Alan Bowes rolls off 9th. Unfortunately, Taylor Hurst will likely not be returning. He is eliminated from the top 22 in points. Michael Cozy Jr., somebody who needs to make up some points, and Tucker Minter, last week's winner, goes off 12th.
Back from row 7, 13th to the inside, Caden Honeycutt trying to get back into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Parker White to the outside of that 7th row. Jordy Lopez Jr. and another driver outside looking in at the top 22 in 16th. That's Brian LaPrade for Lockdown Racing. Brandon McKissick and Wyatt Tinsley going to round out the top 9 rows, James.
We look down off into the 20s on the grid. One name we'll probably keep a close eye on, North Force Racing's Daniel Buttafuoco, who enters tonight 14 points outside of the cutoff. He will need to have a good night in order to have a shot at the Contender Series, but he's got a lot of North Force teammates starting around him.
He does, and same with Falkingham, as he is right around that cut line, needs a good race tonight. Same with James Winslow, Tyler Gary, Ryan Doucette, Derek Justice. You mentioned the NFR teammates working strong right there. But looking at this graphic, James, biggest thing I noticed, Kevin King starts 26th. He's had to do it time and time again, but probably not in a good points position right now to start this race. But every single race he has raced his way forward, he's going to have to do that. And, of course, Ray Alfala, who will not be returning to the Coke Series next year, has to be the story, I think, of this Contender Series, without a doubt.
Brandon Navarre and Christopher Hill, your final 2 starters on this grid of 38 cars that will take the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. Also, if you are watching on twitch.tv this evening, either at the NASCAR Twitch channel or the iRacing Twitch channel, feel free to send your questions to the broadcast booth in chat. And if you're lucky, we might have the chance to answer a few over the course of the broadcast. So that's twitch.tv/iRacing or twitch.tv/NASCAR. Put your questions in either one, and we may be talking about that at some point over the course of the next 100 laps. And yes, to your point, Blake, it will be a little bit strange to see a Coke Series without Ray Alfalla in 2023, but that is what we are most likely looking at this point. But I think we have to give a tip cap to a driver who has been consistently in the top flight ever since it started. 4-time series champion, one of the greatest to ever do it. A bit of a swan song for him this evening. But the battle that we will focus on is the battle for the top 22. And those drivers right around the cutoff lines. The McKissicks, the Rays, the Kings, the Falkinghams, the Cozies, the Tuckers, the Prads, the Buttafucos, the Hogans, and company. As we get set to go racing one more time in 2022. Green flag is out. Vicente Salas heads to the flag stand, passes underneath one of the flagmen, and the season finale for the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway is underway. Vicente Salas just ahead of everybody as they fan out down the back straightaway. And there are a lot of people who will look to get to the inside just to gain the lane more than anything else, not even the track position. If you could get the nose underneath someone, Blake McCandless, you have a shot, and that is critical when everyone is bunched up like this right after the initial start, or if we get a restart later.
It's so important here. You're going to see a lot of aggressive move on this initial start of the race, especially on the back straightaway, as drivers can get a better run off of turn 2. They make that low diving move into turn number 3. Saw Kenton Honeycutt do that a lap ago. Your best passing opportunity, because in 2 or 3 laps, James, the game completely changes. It is hard to make ground up. That clean air going to be so important tonight.
And Josh, it also underscores the importance of fresh tires, because you do get a little bit gridlocked at points here, and you really do have to push on these restarts and push hard in order to maximize any potential gains that you may get off of a good tire strategy or a good setup.
That's exactly what I've been seeing when we began this race as we go on board with Casey Tucker in the 28, who was 4 points under that cut line. Everybody was going for moves early. We're still going 3 wide at closer to the mid-pack, but there's a lot of it on the first couple of laps at the opening of this race. Everybody just going for moves early, and that's kind of what you have to do, especially at a track like this that you mentioned it. Once those tires wear off, everybody starts to get a little bit more even on speed, starts to be a little bit more challenging to make those passes. This is the easiest time in this green flag run that these drivers will have to pass each other, as we see 3 Altus Esports drivers almost near hooked up on the bottom of the racetrack, James, trying to make moves early.
I would not be surprised if you see the 2 drivers in the back of that Altus Esports train stay very close to that driver leading the train, because the one leading the train is Michael Cozy Jr., who is the last man on points entering this evening that was within that top 22. They are going to be trying to push and push and do whatever they can to help their teammate get a place in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for next season. And as you see on the left-hand portion of your screen, we will have live point updates throughout the evening. That's how it looks as it stands. Kevin King would be the last one in. Briar LaPrade will be the first one out as we go on board the driver out of Manchester, Tennessee, tucked up right behind Daniel Buttafuoco, who himself is 11 points out of this spot. Both Buttafuoco and Briar LaPrade need to make runs up to the front and need to get some track position quickly, Blake, in order to give themselves a decent shot in making it to the Coke Series next year.
Well, look at that cut line, James. Look at who's beneath it. It's Malik Ray, somebody who started way back in 32nd, has made his way up to the 26th position. Kevin King, we talked about, he started in 26th, didn't get the run he wanted in qualifying. He's already up to 20th, so is doing a fantastic job at making his way up. And this is all around that 20th position. You have Buttafuoco in 16th, you have LaPrade in 17th, Kevin King 19th, Daniel Falkingham in 21st. So everybody who's kind of fighting fighting for their Contender Series lives to try and make it in the Coke Series next season. They are all bunched up around 20th. That's where you're going to see a lot of the action tonight. Up front, it's mostly settled out there. But, man, all of these spots are going to be so critical around here in that top 20.
Change for the lead up front. Cody Bias is clear. Vicente Salas, as you watch Falkingham just about send it 3 wide there, as Ray Alfala takes that outside lane just ahead of him. But Falkingham trying to get somewhere near the fence, just get in the racing groove so he can lay down a few laps. You see the block there as Kevin King tries to focus into the inside. Normally, I don't think we'd see moves this aggressive like McCandless, but given the points situation, I'm not totally surprised that we're seeing people really try and dive it in deep on corner entry.
It's now or never. I mean, it's as simple as that. And really, this is all caused, James, by the fact that Casey Tucker is up here running in the 6th position. This is the best he's looked all season long, had a great qualifying effort, and he's going to be a big beneficiary of having clean air running up front. You can see Vicente Salas, he's taking advantage of that as well. And how can Malik Ray try to make his way through the field? He's somebody else like Kevin King that has largely been earning his points by racing his way up through the field, and somebody that, like Ray Alfala, has been in the Coke Series for a number of years. It would be shocking, to say the very least, for Malik Ray to not be in the Coke Series next year. And right now, at least as things sit, he's 2 points out.
As it stands now, but Malik has always found a way to get in. That's how he's done this. It seems like somewhere middle of the Coke Series middle of the Contender Series that he might not make it in, and then he finds a way to race his way in. We'll see if he can do the same this time around, as LaPrade just about got into the back of Joey Brown. You can see how hard he is trying to drive his length of Brilliant Supply Chevy Camaro. Any position might make the difference. You don't know, and that's part of why all these drivers are going to be so stressed, Josh.
LaPrade right now is on a mission to try and get inside of that top 22. And take a look at the live points. +1 for the 39, -1 for the 88. Look at 3 spots back on the inside line. There is the 39 of Falkingham. So LaPrade already running in front of him. He needs to get this spot on the 14 of Joey Brown. He needs to keep marching his way up through the field. But let's go to the flip side. If you're Daniel Falkingham, stay as close as you can to the 88 of Briar LaPrade and the 1 of Malik Ray, and add the 29 of Kevin King in there as well. That's all Falkingham needs to do. He needs to stay close, and if he beats Briar LaPrade, there's no way LaPrade can get above the top 22 then for the 39.
Here's your battle for the race lead, where they have spread out a little bit more. Cody Bias and Colin Keister have both managed to pass Vicente Salas, so Bias runs in first, Keister is second, Salas back to third, and then Colin Bowden and Casey Tucker in the top 5. We talked about his run just a little bit ago, and yes, it is a lot of chaos that Tucker is throwing into the equation with where he's running now, but can he maintain the track position like McCandless as we progress through the run? How well does that car handle in 10 laps, in 15 laps, in 20 laps? This is an open setup series, so maybe the car falls off, maybe he has long run pace. It depends on what they've tried to set that car up for, but we have to watch that, I think, equally as much as we do the battle right around Falkingham and the LaPrade Company.
Well, and this is a track, James, that even talking to crew chiefs in real life before the Texas Motor Speedway Cup Series race, it is so difficult to get this car to work well at both ends of the racetrack, because you see the difference in banking and how much, if you get the car to rotate really well in 1 and 2, you're going to be very loose at the other end of the racetrack. So these drivers that make their setup and have really nailed it, they'll really start to make their hay here in about 5 to 10 laps. But if you, on the flip side, if you don't have a car that's handling well, this is going to be one of the toughest tracks to try and maintain your track position.
On board with Derek Justice for North Force Racing out of Elizabethtown, Kentucky. He too racing for a place in next season's Coke Series. 27 points to the good coming into tonight. Sort of relatively strong position so far as the points are concerned. And I would think that'll bring back a little bit of confidence. I think he'll be the first to talk about how it just has not gone his way in the Coke Series, either in 2021 or 2022. But he's got speed in this car. taken from the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Josh Lee, and his performance this season in the Contender Series reaffirms that even though he may have struggled with the next gen in the Coke Series this year, he still really has a good feel for the Class B machines we're racing tonight.
And he doesn't have the wins to speak for it in this series either, James. No polls, but he's got a top 5. He's got 2 top 10s on this campaign. So that 31 at Derek Justice is showing why he does belong in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. As we stay with a side-by-side battle between Malik Ray and another Ray Alfalo, which you mentioned, James. Swang Song race for him, but how about Malik Ray racing to the inside? He's got to make it into the top 22. He was in when we began this race, but a bad qualifying effort moved him all the way down, now outside of the cut line, and they're still racing side by side, elbows out between both of these drivers, and Malik Ray is going to clear Ray Alfalo off of 4.
As they continue to battle, we will step back for just a moment and let you hear the sounds of Texas Motor Speedway as we go iRacing full throttle. Back to the action here at Texas Motor Speedway, and we've got 2 drivers who are right around the cutoff line fighting for position. Briar LaPrade currently in the 14th spot, Daniel Botafuco currently in the 15th position, and how intriguing that 1 year on from the race that he made his way into the Coke Series for. Now Briar LaPrade is on the flip side of this equation, Blake McCandless, where instead of trying to fight his way in, he's trying to fend off the challengers to make sure he returns.
Well, and I think it's really interesting, James, that for Brian LaPrade, it has largely come with a lot of help from his former Coke Series teammate last season in Michael Conti. These two have been working together a lot, and I think it's really cool to kind of see that Michael wants to help his teammate stay in the series. I mean, that's a directive from the man who runs Junior Motorsports and that eNASCAR Coke Series team, is he wants LaPrade to stay in that series. So what has he done? He's enlisted the help of Michael Conti to have these drivers working together and trying to find speed and working on his craft to try to keep him in the series. So I think that's really cool, because we talk about all these teams that you don't oftentimes hear about when we get to that level, the North Force Racing, Dead Zone, and whatnot, and to see these guys kind of reach across those lines and be able to help each other, really cool to see that. And as you can see, it's close right now for Breyer. He is 1 point out. He just needs one more spot with Tucker Minter just ahead, but he's moved up a couple of spots since we dropped the green flag.
I think the point that you make there, Blake, gives us a good chance to remind everyone that these drivers are not operating individually. Yes, you see the names on the scoring pylons and you see their individual cars, but just like in real life, a lot of these drivers, especially at this level, have crew chiefs, have spotters, have people helping them work on their setups over the course of the week to try and find the most speed in these cars, so that when they get to race night, they have the opportunity to go prove their skill, their talent, and prove that they're worthy of a place in the Coke Series. But rarely does anyone in this series find any success whatsoever doing it by themselves. It is almost always with some form of team.
And of course, what better team than the team of Junior Motorsports? They know iRacing from the bottom up, starting with the man in charge, like Blake mentioned. And Conti and LaPrade worked together in the last season, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series as well, made a really good JRM team. And now Brian LaPrade feeling a little bit of pressure behind from the 13 as Daniel Buttafuoco goes to the inside and is going to take that spot. That pushes Brian LaPrade now 2 points below the cut line. That is a crucial spot that he is going to need to gain back, especially with Daniel Folkingham being rather stationary right now in that 22nd spot in the points. If Folkingham's not moving up at all, LaPrade needs to be moving up immediately.
That is a place that Brian LaPrade needs back, and he cannot afford to give up the place to Brandon McKissick just behind him. Go on board now with Ryan Doucette, who entered tonight 16th in points, 19 points ahead of the cutoff, and another driver, much like Michael Cozy, that you would expect a lot of the Altus Esports drivers to go out and help. Their mission, especially when you consider Jordi Lopez Jr. and Tucker Minter in particular, are in very good places to make the Coke Series for next year. It's Doucette and it's Cozy in particular that I think they will likely focus their attention on to try and make sure that they get everybody, or at least as many people from Altus Esports, into the Coke Series for next year as they can.
Well, Doucette's been very strong, but just has not shown that same speed tonight, running back in the 28th position. He's not in a worrisome position right now. You saw that graphic on the left-hand side of your screen just a moment ago, still sitting 7th above the cut line, and at least for him, he doesn't have a lot of points to lose. He's running 28th, and you fall back to 36th, you're only getting 1 point anyway, so he doesn't have a lot of points to lose right now. He can only go up from here, but certainly not the run that I'm sure he wanted to have, especially knowing how well the rest of his teammates are running. He's kind of drifted back, and we'll see if he can hang on. He put himself in a good spot, but we'll see if he can try to make his way a little further forward and make his night a little more comfortable.
Also may want to factor the drop in the equation. Doucette's worst finish of this series was a 23rd at Auto Club, so that may be worth filing away in the back pocket. Now, you take a look here at Jordi Lopez Jr. We've talked about points all night long. It is the theme of this evening. It's worth noting, though, that technically speaking, there is no locking in to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Rather, these drivers are eligible because part of the battle is making sure that you finish top 20 in points, and the other part is making sure that, just like any iRacing member on the service, that these drivers abide by the sporting code, and they have to uphold that as well over the course of the next 2 months between the end of this series and the beginning of the Coke Series, as you do all the time on iRacing. So you have to mind your P's and Q's no matter how you finish in this series. You have to make sure that you conduct yourself well on the sim in order to make sure that you are clearly good to go for Coke. in 2023. Here's a good battle in the middle of the pack. Brian Mercurio, who is likely on the outside and will be on the outside looking in, but Tucker Minter there, working and pushing, trying to get underneath him, and Casey Tucker there on the high line as well, beginning to slide back like we talked about. And you hinted a little bit, Blake McCandless, that we may see him fall back, and given his place in the points, that could change the picture significantly.
It really could, and this is this organization, Legacy Esports, they've kind of trended towards this a little bit with a couple of their drivers this Contender series, where they have really great short run speed, and then at the end of the run it just kind of falls off a little bit and they're just not able to maintain their track position. I hope that Tucker can figure that out, because man, he, of course, former Coke Series driver, he's been around this deal a long time. Be great to see him be a part of it, but that's just a problem that this team seems to have had the last couple of weeks, time and time again, that they just come bursting out of the gate with speed. Unfortunately, on the long run, just have not been able to find it, as he falls even a couple points further back, and going to put himself in a precarious position there when you talk about where that cut line is with Daniel Falkingham, with Malik Ray. The further back that Casey Tucker drifts, that helps those two drivers. You can see it right now. Malik Ray is in, Falkingham is out. So he wants Tucker to keep falling to perhaps give himself a little more insurance above that cut line.
Tucker was 10 points to the good earlier in this run. Now it's down to 3 points, and he is now the last person into that top 22. Falkingham is slid back a little bit as well. Falkingham is 3 points out, as is Briar LaPrade, who's charged a little bit through the field. He's made a nice run to get back to 16th where he started, but he still needs a few more positions. And then if you start getting to Daniel Botafuco and Seth the Merchant and Boyd Hogan, you really need something special if you're going to find your way into the Coke Series for 2023 at this stage, Josh Lee.
We've talked about Malik Ray working his way up through the field. Biggest mover right now, up 11 spots. That puts him above the cut line, especially with Falkingham now losing 2 spots from where he began this race and losing a spot to Malik Ray in that #1 machine. LaPrade still needs to just keep inching his way up through the field right now. He only needs 3 points that he can try and get on the drivers around him, but that's really all the 88 can do right now, is everybody loses one more, and LaPrade gonna gain 1 back on Falkingham as well in the 39, but it's a very, very close race for the cut line right now, James, because Kevin King is not safe. Neither is the 77, neither is the 53. We still have Daniel Botafuco, who is not only 9 points out. He can still make it into the top 22 for eligibility by the end of the night.
Here's Casey Tucker, also worth noting. You might have seen it on the screens that Daniel Falkingham lost a position, and not only lost a position, but lost a position to Tyler Gary. As you look at Tucker and Briar LaPrade on your screens fighting for spots, this is 15th, 16th, right in the heart of this battle for the final transfer spots into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for 2023. And Tucker went way up the racetrack in 3 and 4. I don't know whether or not he's trying to search for something like McCandless, or if the handling has gone away that much on his Ford Mustang, but either way, it doesn't seem like it's working for him at this point.
We'll see if he can. This is the battle for that cut line right now. LaPrade could help himself a lot if he was able to get by that 28 car. And if you're Casey Tucker, you have to start to think 10 laps ahead. We're going to be halfway through this race. Do you want to pit early? Do you want to pit late? If you're somebody like Falkingham, Botafuco, DeMerchant, what strategy are you thinking about approaching to put yourself in the best position possible? Tucker's kind of held on here over LaPrade, but boy, it would help that 88 a lot if he was able to find his way by the 28. You can see how much speed through the center of the corner that 88 is able to carry. Maybe side by side into turn number 3. LaPrade going to look low, and this will shift things quite a bit, as Tucker has fallen out from 7th and now is falling outside the top 16.
He rides way up to the fence, and that is not just the cut line battle with the map. That is a direct battle for not only track position, but the final place in the top 22 in points in the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. This battle right here, as it stands, is for the 22nd and final spot, because you consider that LaPrade would gain a point, Tucker would lose a point, it would flip-flop, and then who knows, we may be going to tiebreakers depending on how this pans out. We'll see where we are at lap 100, but This is it right here. This is it. And Kevin King is right in the picture as well. And he's not that much better off than either Tucker or Briar LaPrade. He's only 6 points to the good, Josh.
Kevin King is watching the fight in front of him between the two drivers that are now on the bubble line on two completely different sides of it. And all he's thinking is, just don't wreck. He wants to stay out of the trouble right now. 6 points above the cut line. As long as he stays even remotely close to the 88 or remotely close to the 28 or even remotely close to Malik Ray in the one as well, in 21st in the points right now, he will be eligible for the Coke Series in 2023, sitting there 6 points above the cut line. But LaPrade has really been trying to get to that inside, and Minter's been running up at the top. And how about a little bit of damage to the back deck lid of Casey Tucker in the 28, James? That could be affecting a lot. Let's see what Tucker does in 3 and 4. He looks down to the inside to cover off the spot on LaPrade.
And make sure that LaPrade can't get the nose underneath him. But you're right, there does look like there's a little bit of damage, and maybe that damage might be extended to the rear quarter panel. So, Blake, you've had the experience racing in this series. 2 questions for you. The first, what would that damage potentially do to Casey's car? And then when he runs up in that high lane, is there anything in particular that you think he might be looking for to try and gain a little bit more speed?
Well, I think he's kind of pioneered this high line. It's not only him, it's now a couple of others that saw how well it was working for Tucker. I think it was mainly a defensive line. It's really hard to pass on the bottom. These cars are getting pretty loose late in the run. So Tucker is just hanging it out up there, and he's carrying so much momentum that he has really just held Briar LaPrade at bay running that high side. And perhaps that damage coming into play a little bit. We've talked time and time again about how in this series, any amount of damage with how good these setup builders are, how competitive these drivers are, any little bit of damage is going to hurt you significantly, even in these Xfinity cars. So perhaps that's just one card that he's trying to pull out of the bag, is just go up there to the top and see if it works. And I think he's found something that not only has worked for him, but is starting to work for other drivers, as we see a spin on pit road. That is Joey Brown, so no points implications here, but Joey Brown, who wanted, I'm sure, to have a much better ending to his Contender series. Going to go out on a low note here, but Joey Brown spins onto pit road, and we have more drivers that are heading in, including Kevin King.
Drivers beginning to make their way down pit road for stops as we approach the halfway point of this race. Another good opportunity to see the right rear of Casey Tucker. You can see that quarter panel is just pushed in a little bit around that right rear tire. And the worst part, Josh Lee, is that with the pace that we've been running, we've been green since the beginning of this race. No yellow flags yet. If we don't get a yellow flag, Casey Tucker won't get a chance to repair that right rear all that much, if at all. He may have to live with that for the rest of this race.
He cannot try and get that damage repaired under a green flag stop, which he's coming in. So is LaPrade. The 67 also is in, locking up in front. But this is where the points are going to be shaken up a ton, as everybody from that mid-pack goes into the pit lane under the green flag. LaPrade is in. Casey Tucker is in. Like I was saying, James, he cannot try and get that damage repaired. He does not have enough time under the green flag, and he cannot lose that many spots to the drivers that were racing around him.
I feel like rocking a hard place is a bit of an understatement right now for Casey Tucker, as Cody Bias comes in from the race lead, as does Seth the Merchant, as does Caden Honeycutt, as does Jody Lopez Jr., Brian Mercurio, Brandon McKissick, Tyler Gary, Wyatt Tinsley, about half the field. Blake McCandless, it seems like, on pit road to split this race into 2 segments of 50 laps.
It's always so impressive when you get to a field of this caliber and see how well that they can handle green flag pit stops. I mean, you had 10, 15 drivers pitting all at once, all around each other. Not one speeding penalty aside from Joey Brown. You can see a couple of drivers locking it up, including Alan Bowes. No black flag right there. So that's one thing watching this series. Anytime we have green flag pit stops, it's amazing how much time they can make up on pit road, and the fact that we don't have any black flags. With so much pressure, James, no black flags. That's an incredible feat right there.
Everybody trying to make the best of pit strategy as we take a look at what happened to Joey Brown. And Looks like it was just a really, really quick entry to pit road. He was trying to carry as much speed as possible, Josh Lee, but at some point you can lock it up too much and put yourself in trouble. And even though the Houston, Texas native has 3 wins in this series, he will likely exit the campaign scoring more points than anyone else en route to a place in the Coke Series. That's not exactly how you want your pit stops to go.
Yeah, and luckily he's still good on points, so it's not coming in with a whole lot of stress for Joey Brown. But if he would have made that mistake earlier on in the season, James, that could have been eligibility gone for Joey Brown. But pit stop cycling their way through. Vicente Salas up to the front of the field, and that battle with the cut line, LaPrade moved up over Casey Tucker on the exit of the pit lane, getting up to speed in a beautiful pass.
Good battle here. Look at Parker White making moves, and I believe Caden Honeycutt. This is 6th, 7th, and 8th that you see on your screens. Haven't had the chance to chat about many of these drivers, but that's all because they've mostly done the work they needed to do to be Coke Series eligible for 2023. It will be return campaigns for Keister and Honeycutt, and Parker White looking to try and make his debut in the Coke Series. We will step aside for a quick commercial break and then be back with more action from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway as you're watching iRacing's coverage of the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series.
It doesn't matter where you're from, who you grew up rooting for, what you grew up watching, your home track, your favorite car, the series you've always wanted to race in. When you're ready to know what it's like, we're here, bringing you as close to the action as it gets with the ultimate sim racing experience. With a community of hundreds of thousands just like you. This is iRacing, and here, every day is race day.
Rated E10 for ages 10 and up.
You wanted the best, you got them for a breast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws. World of Outlaws Dirt Racing is available now.
Welcome back to iRacing's coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. A reminder that if you haven't had the opportunity to pick it up, the World of Outlaws dirt racing game produced by Monster Energy, or rather Monster Games at iRacing. There's a coin jar. Available now, if you so choose, with new DLC content on Xbox One, Xbox Series S, and Xbox Series S, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5. A lot of fun, honestly, that one. I've had the chance to spend some time with that in my free time. Also, you get 50% off of new memberships until January 8th when you visit iRacing.com/holiday-sale. Pick up your new iRacing membership in the iRacing holiday sale for the 2022 holiday season. Points are getting ever so closer here. Blake McCandless and Daniel Buttafuoco. Look at the ground he's made up here on that pit stop. He was arguably the biggest winner. Now only 5 points back of the cut line, riding in 10th.
Yeah, he did a great job. He made up about 3 or 4 spots on that pit cycle up into the 10th position, but his job is not over. You see, he has a lot of ground to go as they continue to battle on the cut line. Falkingham and LaPrade exchanging positions and shifting it around right now as they are tied. Buttafuoco was a huge beneficiary of that. He can make up a couple of spots. He's got a couple of Logitech Altus eSports cars in front of him. So Buttafuoco has his work cut out for him. He sees about 4 or 5 spots in front of him, but he's going to have to get after it here in these next 39 laps. Has to race forward. There's really nothing else to say. He has to go on the charge with Casey Tucker falling back and now 7 points out.
He entered this evening some 14 points outside of the cutoff line. As it stands, he is 5 points out. That's a significant gain for Buttafuoco, but he still needs more. And the other problem for Buttafuoco is that he came in about a lap or 2 before everybody else in the direct vicinity around him on the racetrack. So he may have to hold off drivers on old tires as well. As you see just behind him, not too far back, there's Brian LaPrade, who is tied with Daniel Falkingham for the last spot in the 22. And look who is just ahead of Daniel Falkingham as we slide back a few spots to 20th. That is Malik Ray, who is 3 points ahead of both of LaPrade and Falkingham with 37 laps to go.
This could be huge for multiple reasons, James. Of course, the first one is the one staring us right in the face. Malik Ray would lose a point. Daniel Falkingham would gain a point, moving the 31 further up above Brian LaPrade on the cut line. But LaPrade is farther back from his next driver than Falkingham is. Falkingham's right on the back bumper right now of the 1. Look at that about car and a half gap between LaPrade and the 99 of Michael Cozy Jr. in front. And he's now under pressure by the number 41 of Brian Mercurio to the inside. That'll be another point lost for Brian LaPrade. Now 1 under the cut line instead of tied for the 39.
If we are level on points, I believe time breakers would be the next step. Hopefully, we don't have to get into that kind of crazy math. But as it sits, it's Falkingham by 1. Falkingham by 1, and worth noting that these live points include the drops that are factored into the points at the end of the season. These drivers get to drop their worst finish over the course of the 7. So these points that you see here also factor in the math for the drops that you would have to do otherwise. So that's as close as you can get to real time. But there on the left-hand portion of your screen, meanwhile, here comes Malik Ray working Timmy Holmes to try and get underneath them and get the 18th position. And right on cue, when Malik Ray's back is on the wall, Blake McCandless, here he comes with another one of those runs. But look, right behind him, Daniel Falkingham is right there at his rear bumper.
He finds a way, doesn't he? And he's going to go down, and he's had to race around Timmy Holmes a lot tonight and is able to make his way quickly on by. Falkingham looking to do just the same. And my goodness, this is just incredible drama here at the end. And even watching what we saw a little bit earlier, I'm surprised that LaPrade tied for the cut line, let a spot go on by, and we have a smoker. It is Alan Bowes who blew up. This was not a result of contact, James. Alan Bowes, the engine has expired. Again, he's fine as far as points are concerned, but man, we have to go back and see what happened there. He was running 7th when that happened.
See whether or not it was contact or potentially another thing that you may have to factor in here, Blake, and you'll know it well. Tape. These drivers have to run so much tape on the front end of these cars that it can potentially overheat the engines, and that may be something the entire field has to watch out for, especially for these drivers that have run in traffic over the course of the evening. If you're not getting a lot of air to the nose of your car, then you may end up with an engine that cooks itself if you're just racing for position.
By the way, worth mentioning, that's a teammate of Malik Ray.
So here's Alan Bowes. We'll listen as he goes into 3 and 4. And we will see what exactly happened to him to let the engine go. And you could hear it, you could see it there right by the start-finish line. It's almost as if the thing just shut off. You can see the car idling at about 4,000 RPM. Josh Lee, that to me has the look of an engine issue and a driver that ran too much tape.
I think it's exactly what happened there, James. And take a look at what happened to the live points as well. And what we mean when we're talking about too much tape. You can add tape to the front of these grills. More tape means more downforce. It means higher speeds, but it also means that the radiator is not going to get a ton of air through to cool the motor. So the motor is just going to keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter with the more tape you put on it. And Blake, it just got too hot and let go.
Well, not only did it get too hot, look at where he was running. He was running the outside. You're using the throttle more. You're in the gas. The RPMs are higher when you're on the top side versus when you're on the bottom. So perhaps that's an indicator to the rest of the field. As much as we saw everybody moving up a little bit earlier, it's a little risky if you're running right on the edge of tape and trying to get all the downforce that you can.
And I think that also begs the question, if you think of the drivers that were running up on that line earlier, like a Casey Tucker, are they maybe a little bit more vulnerable as we get towards the back end of this race? This is the tape that Josh was just talking about. You have the ability to modify the amount of tape that you run over the grill, and it does create more downforce. It does effectively make you a little bit faster, but it also increases the temperature of the engine, and if you add too much to it, the engine doesn't get enough air, it gets too hot, it overheats, and then it blows up like what we just saw with Alan Bose. So, little iRacing tech demo for you as you see Parker White dip to the inside of Caden Honeycutt. This is for the third position on the racetrack in 1 and 2.
White on the inside, Honeycutt on the outside, and as they continue to fight that side-by-side, of course, the tie for the live points right now with Briar LaPrade. He needs to try and get by now Derek Justice. A massive gap between those two as Honeycutt goes all the way upstairs, trying, James, that line that we saw Casey Tucker really try when he was battling Briar LaPrade a little bit towards the end of the first green flag run. We didn't really see it a whole lot at the beginning of that green flag run, but granted, it was at the very beginning of the race, right off of the restart, and we saw everybody bunched up, just going 3 wide, trying to get as many spots as they can. Now that we're kind of mature into the race, we haven't had a caution yet in this race yet. Maybe the outside line, they're experimenting with it a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be the best option right now with some 24-ish lap-old tires.
And now I think we really can start honing in on the drivers that are playing into this. Casey Tucker has slid from 10 to the good to 8 points out over the course of this race. It's an 18-place drop for him. He's currently scored in 22nd. He seems like he's fading out of the picture at the wrong time. Buttafuoco has lost 1 spot since we last checked in on him, so he's 6 out. But our focus, I think, as we come down to the end of this race, really is going to be on Daniel Falkingham and Briar LaPrade. And you think about somebody in particular, a Tyler Gary, who has the ability to go past Falkingham if he wants to. But remember, they're teammates for Norse Force Racing, so they may end up working together. And you wonder whether or not LaPrade's got anyone that he can work with to try and get a spot or two and make sure that he is locked into the Coke Series for 2023, Josh. Teammates may be your best friend in a situation like this right now. I would say in that department, advantage Falkingham.
Yeah, LaPrade just has nobody around him, and looking back at the 39 of Falkingham as well, he is only about 3/10, maybe about 4/10 back from the next driver in line, which is the 67 of Timmy Holmes. The gap right now, as we look on board with the 88 of Briar LaPrade, is about 3.5 tenths. So they're about the same apart from each other to their next car. But I honestly think LaPrade might have a little bit of a better advantage, because take a look at what's happening in front of him. Side-by-side battles between Mercurio, Tucker Minter's in that battle, and so is Daniel Buttafuoco, who, as long as LaPrade can get on top of Buttafuoco, he won't have to worry about the 13 gaining spots and gaining time on the cut line.
Buttafuoco got a spot back. He's now up to 9th, but he's still 5 points out. If he wants to be part of this tiebreaker, he has to find a way to get to the 4th spot and get past Caden Honeycutt, who is somewhere in the ballpark of, call it about 2.5 seconds ahead of Buttafuoco on the racetrack. He needs a lot of help in order to make this work. Meanwhile, Kevin King, Malik Gray steadily sitting in 16th and 17th, and in the middle of all of this, as you get a good look at Brian Mercurio here in 10th, Timmy Holmes is just sort of in the midst of all this and physically right in the center of this battle for the transfer spot. But Holmes himself not really factoring into this chop battle because he entered tonight 19 points under the good. He's basically just riding this out. And if anything for him, maybe it's worth it to step back if it gets crazy just to make sure that you don't get taken out. It might be worth losing the 2 spots to ensure you are in the Coke Series than trying to race for a spot, maintain your track position, get caught up in a wreck, and potentially fall out because you don't finish.
Oh, and we're going to have a side-by-side battle right here. Briar LaPrade and Brandon McKissick. McKissick well in. You can see he's 10 points above, but that's going to move Falkingham into the top 22. And not only do you have that, LaPrade, assuming the tiebreaker that we have here tonight, and I was a driver in this, as far as I understand it, it's your highest finishing position. So whoever has the most first, seconds, thirds, what have you, that would go to Daniel Falkingham, who has that tiebreaker over Briar LaPrade. So LaPrade needs this to not sit at 0. He's going to have to finish ahead, or at least points ahead of Daniel Falkingham tonight if he were to advance.
So there is a key point to make note of, that Falkingham has the tiebreaker here. So LaPrade is going to need 2 spots. Here's Daniel Falkingham on the left-hand part of your screen, Briar LaPrade on the right-hand side of your screen, and TV-style coverage with all of our rotating cams, courtesy of the wonderful iRacing camera crew up in that top box. You will be able to see every move that they make over the course of the last 18 laps. As this has sort of distilled itself down, it will more likely than not be these two, Josh Lee, racing for the last spot in the 2023 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series.
And take a look at LaPrade's onboard. To the inside goes the 99 of Michael Cozy Jr. LaPrade tries to fight back, but it's not going to be a whole lot of advantage on the outside line in 1 and 2. Now, how aggressive is Briar LaPrade going to be? Because take a look at Falkingham. He doesn't really have to be aggressive right now. +2 to the cut line. Nobody really around him. He's 3/10 above Tyler Gary and the rest of the pack back there. He is 2/10 behind, or excuse me, 7/10 behind next driver in front of him, which is Malik Ray in the 1. Right now, Falkingham can just relax. 16 to go. Act like you're out on a Sunday drive. LaPrade has to be thinking, pass as many cars as I can and get above the cut line.
And it's not like Michael Cozy Jr. is going to give him anything, or Kevin King for that matter, who makes the pass and now sends LaPrade back into the 16th position. So now it's a 3-point gap between Falkingham and LaPrade. And to make matters worse, Daniel Falkingham has 1 lap. Well, actually, no, they are on the same tire strategy. Just about, they came in on the same lap. I thought there was a difference between LaPrade and Falkingham, but there's still that track position that LaPrade needs to find, and he cannot afford to give up these positions, especially when you consider who just passed him. Michael Cozy Jr. is only 7 points to the good. Kevin King's 8 points to the good. It's not just anybody that's passed Briar LaPrade, it's the drivers right next to him in the point standings.
And LaPrade now, with catching back up to those drivers in front of him, needs to try and get back around them, which I think right now LaPrade has really burned up his Goodyear tires to a point where, I mean, King was faster. We saw Michael Cozy Jr. make quick work. Same thing with Brandon McKissick as well. That's 3 drivers that all were able to get by the 88 of Briar LaPrade. So I think right now, LaPrade's seeing those eligibility hopes kind of dwindle. And if he keeps falling back at the rate he is, as we look back now to Timmy Holmes, Malik Ray, Daniel Falkingham. See where I'm going with this, James? Falkingham might be able to reach Briar LaPrade past the 88, and then we're not talking much about cut line at all. As long as Falkingham's in front of LaPrade, that battle's over.
3 points to the good. Blake McCandless, it's going to be tight for these two as we get down to the finish.
It really is going to be tight, and LaPrade just continuing to fall back. Timmy Holmes looks to have a little more speed as his Coke Series hopes are somewhat dwindling here without something happening. Of course, 12 to go. A lot can happen in this race, and they are tight and racing around the Tucker Minter machine directly in front of them, but it is desperation time right now if you're in that 88 camp. If you're Daniel Falkingham, you don't really have anyone too close behind you. You don't have anyone too, you have some drivers that are way up the road from you. You just need to maintain, not make any mistakes if you're Daniel Falkingham right now. And Parker White just pit out of nowhere.
I'm not sure why Parker White has come down on pit road just yet, but he stops to get service, so White will fall back in the point standings. But plenty of good finishes the first half of the Contender Series. He will likely be one of the 22 that is eligible in 2023 to go Coke Series racing. Meanwhile, here is Briar LaPrade fighting. That's Timmy Holmes to his inside. It's Malik Ray that's also there. 15th, 16th, 17th on the racetrack. And LaPrade right now would need to be 4 spots ahead of where he stands at this point. He would need to be past Brandon McKissick in order to maintain his place in the Coke Series. Now Tucker Minter, and those two are a second ahead of where LaPrade is now. He's got to find something in these last 10 laps, or he will be back in the qualifying series for 2023.
James, we talked about the worst possible scenario for Briar LaPrade. How about let's talk about the best possible scenario for Briar LaPrade? Look at the group of cars that is right behind Daniel Folkingham. It's led by Tyler Gary, but then 2 tenths back, Wyatt Tinsley, another 2 tenths, Ryan Doucette, another 2 tenths, Blaze Crawford, Casey Tucker is back there in that group. And they're all running in a line right now, almost directly behind the 39 and slowly catching. 8 to go at the line. Maybe if we had a little bit more time, that could come into play. I think we're getting to the point where I don't know if that group is going to catch Folkingham in time and enough people past the 39 that Briar LaPrade makes up those 3 points without having to move anywhere.
Something is going to have to happen. This is quickly falling out of Briar LaPrade's control. It may end up being something that happens to somebody else that may give him a shot. He may not have the chance to go race those few extra spots and gain the track position back that he needs. He may need a miracle at this point. As you look at the battle for 3rd and 4th, it's Caden Honeycutt and Seth DeMerchant. DeMerchant 17 points out, so not looking likely that he'll be able to make a charge into the Coke Series for 2023. But not the worst thing in the world to end the season on a good finish, Blake.
No, it's certainly not, and we continue to watch this battle. 7 laps to go, and this is where it all comes down to these last couple of moments. All that prep work you've done, all the testing, all the practice, and it's starting to pay off when you're these drivers that are in a good points position right now. You put so much pressure on this race, you can start to feel it. You can start to think that it's a possibility that you may be advancing into the Coke Series in 2023, but 6 laps to go. Briar LaPrade, Daniel Buttafuoco, Casey Tucker, they just need something to happen, anything, a spin, contact, what have you. They just need a prayer. Is Briar LaPrade going to fall under attack here from Timmy Holmes yet again? He may lose another spot, again making it even more difficult as Malik Ray may try to make up a spot here on Briar as well.
And how about the driver behind this battle between LaPrade and Holmes? That's Malik Ray, who only sits 6 points above the cut line right now and very close to Folkingham as well. He's really trying to get by both of these drivers because he'll solidify himself as one of the top 22 eligible for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And with time running out, you really do not want to leave anything on the table. And how about this now? We talked about Folkingham, we talked about LaPrade. They have found each other on the racetrack for the cut line to be eligible for Coke in 23.
Malik Ray just alongside Briar LaPrade, just in front of Daniel Folkingham. And this is the nightmare scenario for the Tennessean, because now if Folkingham can get around him directly on the racetrack, then that just about wraps things up for Folkingham in the favor of the Mainer. If we don't have something else happen to throw a caution or something wacky take place in the next 3.5 laps.
You see LaPrade, a big slide off as Malik Ray able to make his way on by. Even Folkingham going to make up another point here as he may try to make a move into 1 and 2. So 3 laps to go. He needs a miracle right now. All these drivers do who are beneath the cut line for something to happen.
Daniel Folkingham to the inside of Briar LaPrade with company and help behind him in the form of Tyler Gary as the 2 North Sports drivers try to work together to lock in Folkingham into the Coke Series for 2023. To the inside of LaPrade, he goes down the front stretch, 2 laps to go at Texas.
This was just about the nightmare final run that Briar LaPrade had at the tail end of this race. And there goes Folkingham, James, and that is over. 7 points now above the cut line. And how about Daniel Buttafuoco? He's now tied with Briar LaPrade for the first spot outside of eligibility in 23rd, and LaPrade still falling now more drivers to the inside.
That is how much LaPrade has faded here. He was tied. He's now 7 points back of the cut line as we take the white flag, and LaPrade just about loses it out of turn 4. Meanwhile, Daniel Folkingham clear by about 6 or 7 car lengths. He has taken both hands to the steering wheel and wrested away a Coke Series spot from Briar LaPrade as Cody Bias comes out of turn number 4 to bring it home and win the final race of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series in 2022. Here is the battle coming to the line for the final spots, and we will see as they cross the line 3 wide between Tucker and LaPrade and company which drivers landed in at the top 22 to be Coke Series eligible for 2023. Wild finish there at the end of it all, Blake McCandless.
That it was, and I know we didn't really get to spend a lot of attention right here on Cody Bias, Vicente, and even Seth DeMerchant. Really hate for him that this third-place run wasn't something that was going to help him get in the series, but nevertheless a great end to his Contender Series for him. But, man, a lot of drama here in this final race, and we have a lot of Coke drivers who were just on the cusp of falling out, and some that are falling out, James, and that's the nature of this beast. That is the competitiveness that this series has brought out in these drivers.
Cody Bias burning it down on the front straightaway after a fantastic performance, especially in the second half of tonight's race here at the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. Here are your unofficial results. Cody Bias, your winner over Vicente Salas, Seth DeMerchant, Caden Honeycutt, and Jordy Lopez Jr. Colin Keister finished in the 6th spot. 7th went to Colin Bowden. Brian Mercurio was 8th this evening. 9th went to Daniel Buttafuoco, and Derek Justice completed the top 10, Blake.
It was Brandon McKissick, 11th. He's in. So is Tucker Minter. Michael Cozy Jr., a much-needed run for him. He recovers to finish 13th and will finish in the top 22 in points. So will Kevin King, Malik Ray, Timmy Holmes, 16th. Daniel Folkingham barely hangs on in 17th. 18th to Tyler Gary. 19th, Wyatt Tinsley. And Ryan Doucette, we talked about him struggling earlier, finished with a top 20.
Casey Tucker faded from that great qualifying run, finished in the 21st spot after starting 7th. LaPrade in 22nd, Blaze Crawford in 23rd. As you see, a lot of the drivers here down to the 24th just not having the nights they needed, Blake. Or Josh, rather.
Yeah, and down from here, of course, we have LaPrade and Tucker, who were watching earlier on in this race that just did not have that second run that LaPrade needed. But 25th, Dylan Alt, Boyd Hogan rest down from there. And then 1 lap down, Smallwood, White, and Brown. Issues for Brown, of course. Parker White pitting late, and Alan Bowes. We saw that engine expire. Ray Alfala finishes 54 laps down. And Jonathan Delaney issues very early on in this race, ends up P38 at the end of the night.
There is your 4 field rundown to tell you where your favorite driver finished, and now we can show you, and what we must stress are the unofficial final point standings for the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. The top 22 drivers that you see in points are eligible, should this all get confirmed by iRacing, for participation in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series in 2023. Joey Brown, no shocker, leading the point scores, the most points in this series after that 3-win stretch in the middle of the season. He walks into the Coke Series top 22 point situation with ease. Jordy Lopez Jr., a nice rebound run here after making things happen and struggling last year in the series, comes back and races his way into the top 22. A lot of names that are new, Blake McCandless, that we're seeing in the top 20, and some names that just managed to sweat their way in.
Yeah, a lot of new names when you look at, especially the right-hand side of your screen. You look at Parker White, Tyler Gary racing his way into the Coke Series, Timmy Holmes, Kevin King back into the series. And again, as James said earlier, all unofficial right now, but a lot of names that are returning after long stays out of it, or drivers who have been trying for so long, like Brandon McKissick, to get in, and they have finally qualified their way into the top 22.
Yeah, there are a few names. Kevin King's an interesting one, coming back much like Joey Brown after the long respite. New names, drivers who have fought and tried to get their way in, finally making it happen. And the final two drivers in the top 22 in points, Michael Cozy Jr. and Daniel Fulkingham, unofficially complete the top 22. Josh Lee, and after the way they raced tonight, and Fulkingham in particular, the just wave of relief that must be within them right now. I think it's just about palpable from my chair here.
Cozy Jr. had a great car all night long, and Daniel Fulkingham did exactly what he needed to do. He ran that second run exactly how he needed to, didn't get overly aggressive. And Brian LaPrade very rarely ended up not tied, but over points on Fulkingham. The 39 was perfect all night long and exactly what he needed to do. But James, the 13, 28, 88, going all the way down. I mean, you could talk about Buttafuoco, Tucker, LaPrade, DeMerchant, Hogan, Crawford, Mercurio, Navarro. They're wondering, what if? What if this went differently? What if I had gotten that extra spot here? What if I had earned more points at this track? They'll be wondering what if all the way through to the Road to Pro ladder in 2023 when they try and start up again.
They'll have to come back, and there are a few names there that will have to make their way back in, and a few names that were in the Coke Series in 2022 that were not able to race their way back into the series for 2023. We are now joined by our race winner, Cody Bias, out of Myerstown, Pennsylvania. He is standing by with our Blake McCandless.
And Cody Bias, not a whole lot on the line tonight in terms of trying to qualify for the top 22, but definitely going out on a high note for Dead Zone Racing. What does this momentum mean for you kind of looking forward to this next Coke Series season?
I mean, it means a lot. We had great speed all year, but I would like to really think we had a quiet year. Not too many times we were talked about. We were just around that 6th to 10th place spot all year. In the Contender Series, and tonight we put everything together, had a lot of speed, had clean air, the car drove really, really good. As for momentum goes, I mean, what better way than to end with a win, right? So, I mean, last year in the Coke Series it didn't go as well as I would have hoped, but we're coming in with a whole new outlook and a whole new game plan. So, ready to go here in a few weeks, and can't wait.
Well, I was about to say, you've been at this for a while as a part of this series and a part of the Coke Series for a number of years. What's kind of that outlook with all of that experience kind of approaching a brand new season and having a season under your belt in these next-gen cars?
I mean, the experience definitely pays off in a series like this. It's just, you just got to survive in the Contender Series, make no mistakes. And I think our whole team did a really good job at that in these 7 races. And, yeah, in the Coke Series, man, it's just really want to put everything together. The next gen's a whole different animal, a lot tighter racing, a lot less give, and a whole lot more take. So that's something that I had to get used to this past season. And like I said, I think I'm ready for it.
All right, Cody. Well, congratulations on your win tonight at Texas, and we'll look forward to seeing perhaps what team picks you up when we start the Coke Series in 2023. As Cody Bias finishes in the first position tonight at Texas Motor Speedway, and we'll talk to the driver who started the first bookend of this Contender Series with a win all the way back at Phoenix. He ends it with second, and Vicente, I know we talked a lot about Joey Brown, but perhaps there was no one else that was a presence at the front of the field quite like you were this season. What was the statement that you tried to make in this Contender Series?
I think the statement we try to make as a team is that as long as, you've got people around you trust and, you're dedicated and you know what you want, that you can do anything. I mean, it was me, Dave Siltman, and Carson Hosevar the whole time with Platt up top spotting me. And I mean, as a 3-man team, we got 3 poles, a win. I think we're probably top 5 in points. So, I mean, all glory to God, but, I mean, you can do whatever you set your mind to.
I also want to ask, I know there are a lot of drivers who kind of fall back into their back-end teams and whatnot, but here you are representing Williams Esports. Is that kind of the goal that you're looking for next year, is to kind of link back up with them and try to make another run with them in 2023?
I'd say so. I mean, things always change. I love those guys. But I mean, stay tuned for the announcement. I don't want to give anything away and, give away any fun surprises. So, I mean, we'll see.
All right, Vicente, again, congratulations on second, and all said and done, we will be seeing him in the Coke Series in 2023. A great run for him this entire Contender Series, James.
So now here we are at the end of the season outright. No more Cork Series races, no more Contender Series races, no more qualifying series races, no more College Series, International Series races. It's all done for 2022. We have reached the end. So as you look back on everything eNASCAR in 2022, Josh Lee, what stands out to you?
I mean, I gotta say, the live in-person finale at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I mean, a first of its kind for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series to crown Casey Kerwin as the champion from the Hall. Very memorable for me. And then just the entire season, watching the points develop. I mean, we had a lot of points cut line battles heading into the playoffs of the Coke Series, and we had a cut line battle all the way down into the last 10 laps here from virtual Texas in the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. I'm excited to see what happens in 2023. How can we top what we did in 2022?
Blake, are there any trends, themes that you picked up on over the course of this year that you will identify this season of eNASCAR competition with when you look back on it?
I think it's really something that we've kind of carried forward since 2020 in sim racing in general. That's just growth that the series is continuing to expand, not only in its competitiveness, the amount of drivers who are trying to make their way in, but the quality of racing, the quality of the shows, the fact that we have a live in-person event that gave out $100,000 for the champion. I think 2022 is a part of that upward trajectory for this hobby, for this activity, and I think 2023, just like we've had the last couple of years, is as bright of an opportunity as ever. So looking forward to it. It's been a great 2022 for eNASCAR, but again, I think 23 continues that upward trend, and it's going to be exciting for sure.
I think as I reflect upon the year, it almost feels like the end of an era in the sense that the sim is a living, breathing thing. It is ever evolving. There are constant updates that the teams at iRacing are bringing to it every single quarter. And I've heard a lot of the drivers talk about how it feels like as it evolves, sometimes it sort of comes to you and sometimes it sort of drifts away. And I think that's reflected in some of the drivers that we've seen enter the Coke Series. We've got drivers who weren't around at the very beginning that will be embarking upon their first campaigns in 2023. We've got drivers who have been longtime stalwarts of the series that will not be returning in 2023 after extended periods at the top level of eNASCAR. And then maybe the most intriguing case, you've got drivers like Joey Brown, Kevin King, Cody Bias, who were in the Coke Series way back, and then stepped away, took a break, fell out of the series, whatever, and have managed to find something new or reinvent themselves, and now are back in the Coke Series for 2023. You just have to stay on top of your game, I feel like, and it's a constantly ever-evolving battle between you and your ability to control the car, both in the sim and in real life, too. These principles apply in motorsport, I would say, arguably in general. But I just think it's interesting to witness how that's evolved over the course of 2022. And I'll be very curious to see how things change as we approach 2023, which, oh, by the way, if you're marking your calendars, February 2023, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series returns for yet another season of competition with the best of the best in stock car sim racing. You will be able to catch all the action on iRacing's channels when we get back to it in February 2023. For all of our team at iRacing and all the teams that have brought you all the coverage of eNASCAR over the course of 2022, I am James Pike. Thanks to my colleagues Blake McCandless and Josh Lee and our team at iRacing. Thank you so much for watching our coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Have a safe and happy holiday season, and we will see you in February for the next season of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series starting February 2023.